Thank you everyone for joining us today for our action hour on plug-in solar. We are joined here by Bernie Pelletier, who is the Vice President at PACE, and also Connor Yakaitis, our Deputy Director here at CTLCV. And with that, I will pass it on to Connor to start the discussion on plug-in solar.
Thank you so much, Lily. It's so great to be here with you all. This is a very big session for solar as a whole. So hopefully, most of you are likely tuned in to what's going on at the legislature. It's rapidly changing. But Bernie and I have been working on plug-in solar, balcony solar, portable solar. You've probably heard many terms for a while. And it's a really interesting conversation to have because it publicly, like, people really like it. It seems like an easy thing to do. So I believe Bernie is I'm going to share my screen right now, but Bernie is going to kind of guide us through what that looks like. And then after he's done, we can kind of talk about where things are right now in the legislature.
So as Connor said, yeah, we're here to talk about solar's little brother, plug-in solar. And Connor, on the next slide, reprise this portable solar generation device is how HB 5340 refers to this. This is a nice picture. And the paradigm shift that plug-in brings is instead of thinking it as an external thing that gets put on your roof at great expense and is kind of a very difficult thing that requires a lot of interconnection, it's really an appliance. It's like a hairdryer or a coffee pot. Except instead of consuming 1,200 watts, it produces 1,200 watts. It plugs into an external outlet. The underwriter laboratories are at this point saying you have to have a special plug. So that's something that is still in the process. But the primary focus of this is intended for immediate self-consumption. And we'll come back to this. The beauty of it is that anybody with sun can participate. Even if you have trees, you have one sunny spot, if you can get the panels to that sunny spot, you can go. No incentive is needed, no one is offering one. You don't ever want to backfeed, especially in a power outage. That's just like big solar. And ideally, you wouldn't have exported power. So on the next slide, I just want to show you an example of a solar that somebody has built, actually. Go back. There you go.
Yep.
So this is a real world example. I'll just say without letting anyone know who it is, but the panels that you see here, two of them cost $750. The inverter was $125, and the rack, which looks pretty cool, was about $225. So that's sort of a good. People always ask, what's a price point for one of these things? Somebody's already gone out and sort of done that work for us. So Connor, on the next slide there, just to break it down again, this idea of solar as an appliance, go back one, there you go. The ingredients, obviously it was the panels, just like we saw. There's an inverter, and I bet you most people on this call know what an inverter does, but in this instance, an inverter does three things. Thing one is it takes a direct current out of those two panels and makes it be alternating current. That's what most of the appliances in our house want to consume. An inverter will also say, it'll look at the grid and see if it's up or down. If the grid is down, it'll automatically shut off backfeed. And the typical reasoning for that, and there are several reasons, but the reason that they give is you don't want to have a lineman working on fixing the wires and then you electrocute them with your plug-in solar. And the third thing that an inverter might do for us in this instance is it might say, and we're going to lead into this conversation, I don't ever want to export any power because of the ambiguity of the metering system that we have in our state. And therefore, if it looks like I'm going to export, it will just say, no, you're not going to, it will just defer that power. But that's what the inverter does. And you can see it's consumed by the refrigerator and the fans and various light bulbs and so forth that are in our house. So think of it as generating for your home, not for the grid. So just to talk a little bit about this issue of exported power, even though all of us are thinking these systems are itsy-bitsy, they're little, even with small itsy-bitsy amounts of solar, sometimes there can be exported power. So if there is exported power, we want to ask two questions. Will it be recognized, and will it be compensated? So on the next slide, just going to go a little bit down the pathway of talking about our demand through the day. This is obviously a typical thing, and therefore it's right in general, but wrong for everybody. But if you look at this, this is power consumption over the course of a day, expressed in kilowatts. And, on the very left, you can see that power consumption is low. You're in bed. You might be watching TV. You might be charging your devices. Your refrigerator might come on. Your modem might be on, but you're not consuming very much power. You wake up, and if you're like me, the first thing you do is you head for the coffee pot and you plug that in. Maybe you cook yourself an egg, and the power demand goes up. And then in this illustrative example, the person goes off out of the house for the majority of the day, and then they come back. They come back in the afternoon, and then they really start consuming power. They turn on the oven this time, or they turn on the stove, and they start cooking, and they do some laundry and watch some TV and some Netflix and so forth. And then as the evening goes on, their power consumption goes down. So point of all of that is that our demand sometimes is actually very low in the course of a day. Now, on the next slide, we're going to just look at what a little tiny system like a 1.2 kW system, which is what we're talking about, might produce in April. And this, again, is a very simplified and illustrative example, but it reaches its peak right around noon. In the early morning, it doesn't produce much of anything. By noon, it's cranking out near its max, and then as the evening goes on, obviously, it produces less. So that's the pattern which solar is going to produce when it's producing. On the next slide, we marry up the result of our consumption during the day being offset by solar. And the thing I would draw your attention to is that arrow there, where at the peak of output, when the solar is cranking, and while this hypothetical person is at work, not much power is being produced. And so what's going to happen? You're going to export some power. Now, there's clearly ways around that, but if you're this hypothetical person, this hypothetical solar system, you are going to end up making about 9 kilowatt hours of solar and giving 2.6 of that back out to the grid. So what happens to it? On the next slide, I just marry all three of those slides in one. Hopefully, then on the next slide, let's talk about what happens to that power. When it tries to leave the house, when it's in our houses and powering our appliances, it's ours. In fact, it's invisible to any outside observer. When the electricity wants to leave the house, it says, "Hey, Connor over here he's producing a lot, but he's using a little. Let me send this power out to the grid." In order to make that transition from Connor's house to the grid, it has to go through a meter. And in the state of Connecticut, even though we're kind of an advanced technology state, some of our metering infrastructure is out of date, let's just say. And this meter is the thing that determines how exported power is viewed. Smart meters can enable export. They're smart enough they can distinguish between in and out. Old style meters, which I would just characterize as not very smart, may actually not understand exported power and actually charge for it. And let me give you an example. I mean, that's such a bizarre statement. Many of you are, upset. I just made you upset because how can you send power out of my house, give it to the grid, and then actually be charged for it? And the example I would say is you have a primitive meter, and it essentially is, think of it as a bridge toll. A bridge toll doesn't care whether you're going east or whether you're going west. It just says you're crossing my bridge, and therefore I'm going to charge. So, and that I think is where we are with a lot of meters in our state right now. So that's why I said we want to be in a situation where we're not exporting at all, or if we are, very, very little, because you might actually be charged for it. There's no evil here. There's no hidden cabal, seeking to do that. It's really a limitation of the meters that we have in a good part of the state. And on the next slide, I'm actually going to defer this over to Connor, let's skip this because I think that's what you're going to talk about, what we're asking, where that 5340 is.
Yep.
And I'll just conclude by saying, in our high-priced electricity state, annual plug-in solar savings can be quite substantial, because even a little bit at 30 cents a kilowatt hour or thereabouts might be something like $400 for a ratepayer. So it's small, but it's mighty. And so this is a compelling technology. And as Connor said, it's actually appealing to both sides of the aisle, which makes it remarkable in and of itself. And Connor, I think you're getting minute-by-minute updates on this thing. Let's hear. I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway and call to action for folks on this call right now, we need to reach out to our lawmakers and, people like Matt Ritter that have leadership, and tell them that, solar as a whole, not just plug-in solar, is very critical right now. So that means there's been talks about putting caps on residential solar, both financial and megawatt caps. That would basically eliminate the solar industry in Connecticut. As the bill has been passed, 5340 through Energy and Technology Committee, we want that to move forward as best as it can. And giving in to any sort of, wattage caps and things like that, not acceptable. So, plug-in, it's nice because it's kind of gone under the radar, and it's a nice, publicly beneficial thing that like people really like. But right now, the time is of the essence for all of you, to call your lawmakers and tell them that our legislature and our governor need to take solar as a whole very, very seriously. There's an opportunity. That window is starting to close, so hopefully you all do that.
Connor, if I could jump in on that point.
Yeah.
The plug-in solar is part of a much bigger bill, right? It actually
It is.
the tariff renewal.
5340, yes. HB
So we're
5340.
tucked away.
Right now, we are trying to figure out there's a lot of different amendments being offered up, but we're right now. I think the most important thing for people to hear, for lawmakers to hear from you all, is that we need to advance solar and incentivize solar. Especially the residential solar. We need to make sure that there are no limitations on residential solar. No caps, which is something I want to email them in all caps, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and right now, residential solar, which is called RRES, residential solar, is uncapped. They have a target of 60 megawatts per year, which we've actually in recent years exceeded. But as Connor is saying, for reasons that are not entirely clear, that really have not been vetted through Pura and others, there is a broad cap that would apply to the commercial NRES, non-residential solar, SCEF, which is the Shared Clean Energy Facility, and they would bring for the first time ever residential solar into that and cap it in the aggregate. And that is really undesirable on a bunch of fronts.
And if the clean energy workforce that we have here in Connecticut, it's growing. I mean, just a couple days ago, they released a report that said that the clean energy job growth has outperformed the regular job growth here in Connecticut by like 400%. So things like this are creating jobs, which is really, really important for people to hear.
And Connor, as on this call, we've got at this point 64 people. Some people are already solar experts; they know everything about it. But
Sure.
perhaps the majority of folks aren't. And so I let me take a crack at what you would just say. You would basically say, dear legislator, we support solar. We reject anything that is going to cap or restrict solar, especially residential solar.
Yes.
Words to that effect, right? And the league has been wonderful about helping people get the message and pass it on.
But yeah, no limitations, no caps, no nothing. Like we basically, as it's being presented, or as it's coming through different amendments, right now they're trying to take away your solar. That is not allowed. We cannot, as people, we cannot allow that. So anything that restricts solar is a non-starter.
Yeah, and as you said, the session itself in its entirety ends on May 6th, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of things that just procedurally that have to happen, and so things get really, really jammed up at the end.
Yeah, plug-in solar would be great because quite frankly, too, it ties in. If I'm a person that, and I am a person that has a balcony, if I tie into a little bit of solar, I'm also thinking about energy efficiency. That's the quickest way we can save money on our bills by being more efficient. If I have a solar panel out there that's, plugged into my refrigerator or my oven or whatever, I'm more conscious about the energy that I'm using and also the energy that I'm producing. So it really ties in, it's a mindset as well. And plug-in solar is like a nice little way to get there, but this big 5340, this big House bill that is just right now in its current form looks pretty good, but we cannot allow them to roll back on our ability to invest in solar.
And Connor, I just want to let you know in the chat, I see somebody in New Haven has a balcony. We've got somebody from the North Haven Clean Energy Task Force who probably represents a number of people. Got somebody with lots of trees in Guilford, but would be a candidate for plug-in solar. So the situation that you outlined, people with a balcony with a little bit of sun, not a lot of sun, perhaps in a rental situation, plug-in solar would be sort of the great entree into this world of renewable power, which in turn is going to, as you said, get people thinking about how much energy they use. Right now, most people are completely unconscious, and so whether they generate it or whether they just use it more efficiently, these are great steps for us to take.
Solar, at the end of the day, it's what we're trying to do here in Connecticut and what should be going on preferably around the world. We want to get energy independent, right? We don't want to, you hear conversations about, investing more in natural gas here in Connecticut and throughout New England. That's not the right call. It's just not. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. We want to be completely energy independent. That's your right, that's my right to, you know, take energy beneath my feet in thermal, above my, head, solar, off the shores of, the coast, with wind. Like this is what we can do. We can become more energy independent here in Connecticut, here in New England, and this is a positive step in that direction.
So,
Yeah.
Some people are asking, how do you tell whether you have a smart meter or not? And generally speaking, if you're in United Illuminating Territory, so if you're Avangrid or UI, you have a smart meter. And the majority of the state where I am in West Hartford, we're in Eversource territory, and I have a smart meter because I have big solar already, but the majority of my neighbors don't have solar, and therefore they don't have a smart meter. So that's sort of the way to tell what sort of meter that you have.
On 5340, There's the what's called the solar successor programs. So basically, we have all of these incentives in place right now, and they expire at the end of next year. December 31st, 2027, they expire. We want to keep that going. We want to build upon that. So we really need folks like you to, call your lawmaker and say, look, what's working right now is working for the state of Connecticut, and we need to keep those programs in place. Otherwise, you kill the entire industry.
Couple technical questions, which I don't want to answer, which I can't answer. I would like to answer
Yeah.
them, but how big a circuit do you have to be on to have plug-in solar? And I think, as I understand it, these things are part of the underwriter laboratories, and there's an electrical standard that's in the legislation right now, and they would be addressed in the legislation.
Yeah, so basically the way we've designed the bill is to what Bernie was saying, to basically make sure that it's UL certified, which is the national standard. Um, that would solve basically any safety issues. We've been in contact with UI, we've been in contact with the folks at Eversource, we've been in contact with folks from the firefighter union, and also, the state inspector's office for safety. So we have been making, and that's a really positive thing, by the way, the fact that the environmental groups are having such open communication is amazing. There may be, some stuff to figure out down the road, but right now we're all in agreement. Like no red flags have been raised, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I would agree with that. No red flags. I think there are some technical issues, which is why I brought up that metering issue. But I don't sense that that's obstructionism. I think that's just the state of the electrical system.
Yeah. And I'm looking at Brian's question right now. Any realistic objections? So in terms of the bill, like what, if you call lawmakers and you might expect an objection. I can say the one thing that keeps coming up is that there's been chatter about making this into a study instead of, just moving forward with plug-in solar. Hey, let's have Deep study it. Quite frankly, I can't speak for Deep, but they don't have the staff or ability to do that right now. And quite frankly, what happens when you have study bills is, hey, it gives an excuse to basically kick the can down the road. This has been, done very successfully in Germany, like Bernie said. And it's just been recently passed in Utah as of last year. It's been passed, I think, in Virginia now, too. States are passing this. This technology does not need to be studied. It needs to be enacted and it needs to be encouraged. And that's what we have the opportunity to do right now. We cannot afford to kick the can down the road for another couple of years. So we bring this bill back up, and we say, look, you know, we're gonna look into it, but we're not actually going to enact it. That doesn't make sense.
And just to take your point a little farther, I I believe that Virginia has approved plug-in solar. I think the state of Maine has approved plug-in solar, and a couple other states have either done it or on the cusp of doing it. So, in terms of studying it, if it's been done, that should be the study. There's nothing magic about electricity in our state. Yeah, so Brian says study means stall. I do, Connor, if I can, I want to just address Dion's point. She indicates, I love the idea of solar energy, but the fact that one still gets charged for it, and it tends to be limited to homeowners, are we really saving on energy that way? And it isn't that we're getting, so big solar is definitely a money saver. It's amazingly the biggest, it isn't confined to just well-off towns and residents. Bridgeport, I think, has more solar than any other town or city in Connecticut. So does Waterbury is up there. So it's not just a province of wealthy people. It is really quite available to everyone. And your comment about it getting charged, that was only one small instance when you export power. So plug-in solar would be definitely worth it, especially if we can resolve that export issue on it, which we can.
Yeah, and I would also add to that. I mean, you look at environmental justice communities that could be, a perfect fit for things like balcony solar. If we get this over the finish line, we can then create incentive programs to make sure that folks are able to access that. But I think it's a combination of access and the mindset that you really are bringing. If you're more conscious about the energy that you're producing and using, you are going to bring down your bill. I think the whole debate on solar going on right now is really, really pertinent for just clean energy as a whole. If we take it up another level, um, again, Connecticut has an opportunity right now over the next, couple months, over the next year, we can really become energy independent. And it's really about just investing in things like solar, trying our best to do things on offshore wind. There's some really cool stuff with thermal going on right now, especially in New Haven. It's just we really need to change the narrative about clean energy. It is not the reason why your bills are going up. It can be the reason why your bills are going down.
If there's one takeaway to take out of this, is I would say that was it, Connor. I think a lot of folks are trying to say that solar is the cause of high bills. It is not. And if I can, very quickly, I'm just going to share this town by town graphic.
Yes, please do. Yep.
I hope folks can see that, but what this is number of installations by town, all utilities, all years, all sectors, which means it's commercial and residential. But this is what I was trying to say before. Waterbury leads the pack at 3,536 installations. Close on its heels is Bridgeport with 3,456. These are towns that have lots of low-income residents in them, but they have lots of solar as well. So I think I'm particularly fond of this chart, which is on the Energize Connecticut website under solar installations.
Awesome.
So
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll stop it. And Connor, I'm looking at Dorothy's comment, which I want to address. I believe that the argument for capping residential big solar is because the public benefit charge is used to compensate net metering. And that is a true statement. When I have a little system myself, and when I export power, which I don't do much since I got my 2 electric cars, but that power is purchased by, in my case, Eversource, but for UI folks by UI, and ends up as a charge in the public benefit charge. That's a true statement, but it's a very, very incomplete statement. The fact that it is charged there, one has to ask yourself, well, what do I get for that charge? And there's a whole series of things that one gets for that charge. First and foremost, the power that I export just goes to my neighbor, and they buy it at the retail rate. That power comes to those folks without much use of the distribution system or the transmission system. It generates its own RECs. It's clean energy. It defers the amount of maintenance and build out that needs to be done on the transmission and the distribution grid. So all of these are positive benefits to not only me as the adopter, but also to those people who haven't adopted solar, but take advantage of the power that is purchased on the public benefit charge. And just one additional point, behind the meter solar actually has a profound impact across New England. You can look at our power consumption during the course of almost any reasonably sunny day, even on a day like today, and you can see that behind the meter solar is reducing the demand. When the demand is reduced, the price is reduced as well. So it is true that the public benefit charge is the mechanism of recovery, but what's not true is that the juice is not worth the squeeze.
Could not have said that better myself. Yeah, I love the way Bernie frames, all this complicated stuff. It's complicated by design too. It's such an just looking at our electric rates and the structure and everything like that. It's designed to trick you. Which is why folks like us are here to kind of try to weave through the narrative and figure out what's really going on. So, Bernie, I appreciate that perspective very much.
And Connor, I don't know what your situation is, but I know you have a balcony. Are you in an apartment building?
I am. Yeah, in Rocky Hill. Yep. I've got a balcony that actually faces west, and we get full sunshine throughout the day.
And the reason I ask is Diane is asking about living in a multifamily situation. How would that be for plug-in solar? And I think that's one of the sweet spots for plug-in solar.
Yeah, no, it really is. I think there's going to be a lot of details that need to be hashed out with plug-in solar, how that, really works, and making sure that, you have a certified electrician that's doing the work for you. My grandfather was an electrician in Windsor. I would not want to set up this kind of thing myself, right? I would want to make sure that there's good help there that is, certified and trusted to set it up for me. And I think that, the safety component to this is so essential. So making sure that, everyone's able to do it in a way that is safe, it is certified, it is responsible, I think is going to be really, really key. And I think that would, translate into multifamily housing and all that stuff. So
agreed. And we have two companion questions. What if one is in public housing, multifamily public housing, or if you're in a condo situation? I think you're in a condo situation,
correct,
Connor.
Yep.
And in both of those cases, public housing and or condo situation, plug-in solar would be an allowable technology. That's the nature of the legislation.
Correct. Yeah, I think, I've been thinking about this actually, Bernie, quite a bit because I've been putting so much time and effort into passing, this kind of legislation. I've asked myself, would I be able to benefit, in the next couple of years? I think we'll definitely have to invite, condominium and apartment developers to the table to talk about how it would work on their end. I think the most important thing is passing this as is to incentivize folks like condo and apartment developers to embrace it, to add ways for that their tenants can really take advantage of a really unique opportunity that will reduce demand and incentivize people to think about the energy that they use. What's not to love? So I think there's plenty of more conversations to be had. It should not, hopefully, this has never been, my intent or your intent to spook condo and apartment tenant or sorry, companies to, shy away from this opportunity.
No, and I think, Connor, to take it one step further, there's a lot of discussion about if I'm a landlord and Connor, you're my tenant.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, people will say, Bernie, the landlord, doesn't care about Connor's electric bill because it's Connor's problem. It's not me, the landlord's problem.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element of truth in that. But if you go a little deeper, if Connor is burdened with a $400 electric bill, he might not be that good a tenant because he might not be able to pay the rent. And so I think things that if I as a landlord can make living in my complex affordable for tenants, I'm going to have a better group of performing tenants. They're going to be more readily able to pay their rent, for example. Question that has come up, can extra plug-in be added even if I already have rooftop solar? I'm going to say I think the answer is yes. I do know that, and Connor, if you can correct me on this, I don't think you can just line up 10 plug-in solar arrays and have multiples. But I think you
No,
can have one, right? You can only have one, right?
it would be one system. Yeah. That's very important to know. Like you cannot just plug in a bunch of different units together. And that actually that comes back to safety too. When folks are talking about plug in with their lawmakers and stuff, technically you could buy a solar panel right now online and set it up yourself. Again, I mentioned that earlier. I would not want to set that up. Passing plug-in solar is actually addressing a very real safety concern. And it's setting things in place that you have to do it this way or no way. So it really is, it's addressing a very real thing that people can just set up their own solar right now. That's not what we want. We want people doing it the responsible way, the efficient way, and the right way.
There's some great discussion, Connor, in the chat about maybe referencing the fact that sometimes we're in a situation where exporting power could occur that may or may not be desirable or permissible. And somebody said, well, can't we store it? And yes, you can purchase a battery, a small battery, and store some of it for later consumption. And that's another one of those technical aspects. I don't know what sort of battery technology there is, but I think you could store a couple kilowatt hours for sure in a battery.
I see Fred Morrison's question as well. Forgive me, I did not mean to imply that it wouldn't. I mean, it should. That's the whole thinking behind this is that basically, if you're allowed to do it through your apartment complex and your tenant, or sorry, your landlord is able to set it up in a safe way, this theoretically should absolutely bring down your bill.
Yeah. Yeah, if we take Fred's case, so he's renting an apartment. If he has a balcony or a place where he can access some sun, he would put the solar panels out. The sun would hit them. It would be plugged into his apartment and would reduce his meter.
As far as HOA, I mean, yeah, HOA approval probably. I don't. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to not deal with an HOA in my life, so I'm not sure.
Although I think that's a good question, Walter. I think that's a good question to ask the HOA. I can't answer either. I only know sort of the internet memes about how persnickety HOAs are, about the color and what you can plant and all the different things that you can do and can't do, mostly the things you can't do.
Bernie, I mean, if anyone has any other questions, but I do think we can probably wrap up and give people some time back. Solar is on the line right now as a whole, not just plug-in, all of solar. And right now they're threatening to take away your right to invest in solar, and we can't let that happen. So please, please, please call your lawmaker, call Speaker Ritter. That's the action.
And with that, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their day to join us.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.